Here we have two original Xbox power supplies. The one on the left is the original one that came with my Xbox when I bought it used in 2010, and the one on the right is the replacement when this one blew. So this would have been the original one that failed mysteriously way back when, and is in the original Xbox power supply replacement video. And this is the one that blew up on me back in about August. You can still see the scorch marks right there. And on the inside, right in there, you can see where it pretty much blew up on me. Looks pretty crazy. Now, I spent a little time unable to snag a new power supply because they're not expensive, but they're not the most, priority thing. So what I did was I picked up, once I had the spare money, a third-party Chinese one, due to recommendations on some forums I post on. Person recommended getting one of these because, hey, it's a new build, it's universal, it's a cheap Chinese thing, but it works. And when I received that about a month ago, I had recorded video of me doing the install process, the unboxing and the like. But after I installed it, I noticed that there were these odd ripples in the blue and red video signals on the Xbox. Now, you don't just want to go buying new power supplies all willy-nilly when you can't afford it, so I dealt with it for a while, but eventually I got sick of it. And I posted on the forums wondering, hey, can anyone help me with this? Anyone have a clue? And some people were saying, oh, your video connectors are dirty. I took 1 in 2000 grit sandpaper to those, so I know the connectors are clean and fresh from the factory level of, deoxidized. One guy was suggesting that the actual video circuitry, like the GPU, was failing, and I was like, no, this just happened between change-outs of power supply. This had to be it. And I went to a local game shop, and they had a bunch of Xboxes that the clock capacitor had blown and corroded the traces, so they were no good. Went on and bought a new one, installed it in the box. I didn't feel like making a video about it. I already have a power supply install video. It would have been the same thing, just in higher quality because of the new camera. And I installed it, and the ripples are gone. The Xbox runs fine. So the source of the video ripples and the problem itself had to be this power supply. Now, as I said, this is a cheap, third-party Chinese thing. That being said, it is designed to be universal. So, if we take a look here, you have the connectors for the version 1.0 to 1.3. You have the adapter for model 1.6 Xbox. And you have this little thing for model 1.4 and 1.5, which actually sockets into the version 1 to 1.3 pins. It clips in there in some way. It doesn't matter. It's not important. Now, the power supply works. It does have this nice little fuse for, protecting against power surges and the like, for what a fuse is worth. And, the build quality is decent. The soldering job on the bottom isn't the greatest. It's very sloppy in some places, but, it works. And outside of those ripples, it's alright. Now, the thing is, this is a universal power supply, and not all Xboxes are the same. As they did revisions, there has to be something a little different about each one of them. So what I'm thinking is, because mine is a version 1.0, it just doesn't provide quite the right power necessary. Either too little, probably too little, or too much, or something. It works fine, but it is very odd. Also, there is some cheapness with the Molex connection for the hard drive, just as an aside. The biggest annoyance about this power supply outside of that is the fact that when you first turn it on, you have to hold down the button for a little bit. Normally, with an Xbox, you'll just tap the power button and it starts. With this one, you have to hold it for about a quarter of a second as you hear the power supply actually click a switch, a solenoid of some kind engage, and the system actually get going. Now after that, it's fine, save for the ripples in the video display. The third-party power supplies, you really don't want to get one unless absolutely necessary. The recommendation for this was due to the age of the original components, that we're talking about power supplies that are, coming on 14 years old. Capacitors are drying out, parts may fail, but, there's electrical components in other consoles that last just as long, if not longer, without failing. You think about it, there's no real components that are different in this, save for higher voltage, tolerances and the like, than any other component, and capacitors are equally fragile. You've got the same kind of stuff inside of your console, so I don't see why these would have, or the original power supplies would have that high of a failure rate, and they don't really seem to. I took the suggestion, and it wasn't the best suggestion, but it was at least something available, because at the time, no one really seemed to have any of the original style Xbox power supplies available, so it was this or nothing. And it was only like 15 bucks total, I think, so it wasn't too bad. The replacement original power supply from Disconnection was 10. So, it's nothing too bad. It's just very weird that I'm actually out more money on this console due to buying 2 or 3 different power supplies at this point than the amount I originally spent on it, which was about $30. But for what it's worth, it's still a very, very useful little console, so it's worth it in short spurts, but I wouldn't want to be spending this much money every single week on it. At that point, I'd just sell it to somebody else and let them deal with it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Catch everyone later.